You're watching War Unfiltered.
Subscribe, comment your thoughts.
And don't miss the next episode. Let's start.
By 1916, World War I had entered a new phase, a phase darker than anything seen before. This was no longer just men fighting men. This was machines fighting humans. Steel, fire, gas, endless artillery. Generals believed technology would break the stalemate. Instead, it broke humanity. By 1916, World War I had entered a new phase. This was no longer just men fighting men.
This was machines fighting humans.
Steel replaced courage.
The battlefield became a factory of death. Men could do nothing but wait for death. Every second felt like it could be the last. The noise never stopped. It crushed the mind before it touched the body. Sometimes silence was worse than the shells, because silence meant something was coming. Flares cut through the darkness. For a few seconds, everyone was exposed. Machine guns answered the silence. The trenches shook, and fear became real. Then the shells arrived. Not one, not two, but thousands. The trenches collapsed. Mud became a weapon. Men were buried alive.
The air disappeared. Breathing became a struggle. Fear entered every lung.
Then came silence. Not peace, but the pause before death. Without warning, the earth screamed again. Shells returned, and men disappeared. For a moment, time stopped, and fear took its place. Men did not scream. They simply tried to remember how to move again. Then the silence broke, not with words, but with thunder. Shells fell without warning. The earth itself turned against them. Every explosion felt closer. Every second could be the last. Then came the silence, more terrifying than the shells. Every man waited, knowing the next sound could be his last. Then, without warning, the silence was shattered. Shells began to fall again and again, turning the earth into a storm of fire. Inside the trenches, men waited, praying the next shell would miss. Then, without warning, the earth exploded around them. When the smoke cleared, nothing looked human anymore. This place had a name, Verdun. It was not the largest battlefield, but for France, Verdun meant survival. To the German command, Verdun was not a city, it was a calculation. General Erich von Falkenhayn had a terrifying idea. He did not want to capture Verdun. He wanted to bleed France dry. Verdun was not chosen by accident. It was chosen because France would never abandon it. German General Erich von Falkenhayn believed victory was no longer about territory. It was about exhaustion. Verdun was chosen for one reason. France could not abandon it. German General Erich von Falkenhayn did not plan to capture Verdun. His plan was not victory. It was exhaustion. Verdun was chosen for one reason. The French could never abandon it. The German plan was not about land. It was about exhaustion. force France to keep sending men until the army collapsed from within. Before the guns fired, there was silence, a silence filled with fear. Soldiers waited, knowing what was coming, and knowing they could not escape it. Then it began. Shells fell like rain. The earth itself seemed to scream. Verdun was no longer a battlefield. It was a furnace. For hours, it did not stop. Shell after shell, explosion after explosion. In one single day, over 1 million shells were fired at Verdun. The land itself was destroyed. The earth opened up. Men were buried where they stood. Some were never found. Verdun became a grave without names.
Soldiers waited in silence. Every moment felt like the last.
Hours passed without orders. Fear became a constant companion. Weapons were cleaned again and again, not for battle, but to calm shaking hands. Men sat together, yet felt completely alone. The silence was heavier than any shell. Night in the trenches was never peaceful. Darkness only made fear louder. Dawn arrived, but it brought no hope to the trenches. It only meant another day of waiting to die. Shells fell without warning. Every second felt like the last. Survival depended on brotherhood. Men carried each other when bodies failed. Dawn did not bring hope. It only meant the killing would begin again. When the order came, there was no hesitation. Only men walking toward almost certain death. Shells fell without warning, tearing the earth apart. In those moments, survival depended on pure luck. For a brief moment, the guns fell silent, but every soldier knew it would not last. This moment changed the direction of history forever. A single decision reshaped the fate of generations to come. When the guns fell silent, the battlefield did not rest. Verdun became a graveyard without crosses. Rain washed the blood into the soil, but nothing could wash away the memory. Verdun survived because this road never slept. Men, food, and ammunition moved forward every single day. By nightfall, the battlefield fell silent, but the ground was already filled with the dead. The men did not sleep. They waited for the next shell to fall. Every explosion rewrote their thoughts. Fear became routine. Sleep disappeared in the trenches. War never allowed silence. Rain turned trenches into graves. Men stood waiting for death. There was no victory here, only survival for one more moment. Silence was rare at Verdun. Even quiet moments felt dangerous. Men were rotated to survive, but Verdun never released them. Sleep came in fragments. Even rest was never safe. Weapons were cleaned again and again. It was the only control they had left. Dawn arrived without hope. Only another day of survival began. Their faces showed no anger, only exhaustion without an end. The trenches no longer protected life. They became open graves of survival. The soldiers were still alive, but the war had already taken something from them. By mid-1916, the soldiers at Verdun were no longer fighting for victory. They were fighting simply to survive another day. There was no rest in the trenches. Even survival required constant work. Faces no longer showed fear. Only exhaustion remained. Every movement felt heavy. Even simple tasks drained their strength. Meals were short and silent. Hunger was constant, even during rest.
Night duty was the most feared. Darkness hid death on both sides.
Even when guns fell silent, the work never stopped. Survival depended on constant repair. Night offered no safety. Darkness only sharpened fear. Even in silence, the work never stopped. Survival depended on every small repair. Between explosions, men waited in silence. Every moment felt like borrowed time. Hunger and fear were constant companions. Even survival felt like a daily battle. Night brought no peace to the trenches. Darkness only made the fear louder. When the sun rose, the war did not end. Only the survivors remained to remember. The French refused to surrender. They stood firm under relentless pressure. General Philippe Pétain took command. He brought control to chaos. The French refused to surrender. Verdun would not fall. General Philippe Pétain took command. He brought order to chaos. The French refused to surrender. Verdun had to be held. The French refused to surrender. Verdun had to be held. The French refused to surrender. Verdun had to be held. General Philippe Pétain took command. He chose control over chaos. The French refused to surrender. Verdun became their line of honor. General Philippe Pétain took command. He chose control over chaos. Supply roads stayed open under fire. Verdun was fed, not abandoned. The wounded were evacuated under fire. Every life mattered at Verdun. Supply roads stayed open day and night. Verdun survived because support never stopped. The wounded were pulled from the front. Every life saved kept the line alive. Supply roads never closed. As long as they held, France stood. The wounded were never abandoned. Every life mattered at Verdun. Supply lines stayed open under constant fire. Without them, Verdun would have fallen. The wounded were evacuated day and night. Every life saved meant resistance continued. Supply roads stayed open under constant fire. Organization became France's greatest weapon. The wounded were evacuated without delay. Every life mattered at Verdun. Supply roads stayed open under constant fire. Verdun survived through discipline and planning. The wounded were evacuated without pause. Every life mattered at Verdun. Supply roads stayed open under constant fire. Without them, Verdun would have fallen. The wounded were pulled from the front lines. Every life saved meant resistance continued. General Pétain took control at Verdun. Order and discipline replaced chaos. Supply roads stayed open under constant fire. Wounded men were pulled back, fresh troops sent forward. Pétain saved Verdun not with glory, he saved it with discipline and organization. Wounded soldiers were evacuated under fire. Fresh troops replaced the broken men. Supply roads stayed open despite constant fire. Without them, Verdun would have fallen. Verdun did not survive by chance. It survived because men refused to break. Verdun became a testing ground for modern warfare. Machines now ruled the battlefield. Machine guns mowed down waves of men. Human courage meant nothing anymore. Men advanced knowing they would die. Orders mattered more than lives. Flamethrowers turned trenches into furnaces. Fire showed no mercy. Men burned alive where they stood. Screams vanished in smoke.
Poison gas crept silently. Death arrived without warning.
Lungs filled with fire. Men suffocated in terror. The wounded were left behind. Survival depended on luck. Artillery never stopped. The earth itself was shattered.
Men did not die as heroes. They died as targets.
Verdun was no longer a battle. It had become a slaughter. Men charged forward, knowing death was likely. Still, they ran. Artillery ruled the battlefield. The ground never stopped shaking. Trenches offered little safety. Death fell from the sky. The wounded cried for help. Many were left behind. Every trench became a killing zone. Survival was pure luck. Shells erased men in seconds. Bodies vanished without names. Fresh troops replaced the dead. The cycle never stopped. After battle, silence returned. But peace never came. Verdun consumed everything. Land, bodies, and hope.
Machine guns ruled the battlefield. Charging meant certain death.
Human waves met metal bullets. Men fell by the hundreds. Fire was used as a weapon. Trenches burned alive. There was no escape. Fire consumed everything. Poison gas crept silently. Breath became agony. Lungs burned from the inside. Men suffocated where they stood. Gas showed no mercy. It killed slowly. The battlefield turned silent. Death lingered in the air. War moved to the factories. Machines fed the front. Weapons replaced strategy. Production meant survival. Men became numbers. Lives were counted in losses.
Decisions were made on paper. Men paid the price.
There was no end in sight, only more blood. Nature was destroyed. The land itself suffered. Verdun changed warfare forever. This was the future of war. Some leaders learned, others did not. Confidence blinded command. Mistakes were repeated. German command underestimated resistance. They paid for it. France refused to collapse. The line held. Adaptation became survival. Delay meant death. Some attacks were hopeless. Men were sacrificed.
Orders ignored reality. Graves filled fast.
Leadership was divided. Decisions were deadly. Rotation saved strength. Organization saved lives. Rest prevented collapse. Relief meant survival. Resistance surprised Germany. Momentum slowed. Stubborn plans failed. Losses mounted. Bad leadership costs lives. Always. Adaptation brings control. Control brings survival. Logistics mattered. Bullets were not enough.
Lives were recovered. Hope was preserved.
Failure drains morale. Confidence fades. Numbers replaced names. Loss became routine. Defense proved smarter. Patience saved lives. Brute force failed. Adaptation mattered. Verdun taught lessons. Some listened. Good leadership guides. Chaos destroys. Bad orders kill. without mercy.
Flexibility saved men. Rigidity killed them.
Endurance has limits. So does command. Verdun judged leaders harshly. Experience became wisdom or regret. The cost was visible everywhere. The battle continued. Lessons remained. Strategy shapes fate, always. Smart defense endured. Stupidity collapsed. Refusal to adapt failed completely. Verdun exposed leadership without mercy. Good decisions saved lives. Bad ones buried them. Verdun proved one truth. Leadership decides fate. Verdun judged every commander without mercy. Bad decisions filled graves. Good ones saved lives. Leadership shaped outcomes. Mistakes cost thousands. Verdun proved one final truth. Leadership decides everything. The battle lasted 10 months. 10 months of mud. 10 months of waiting. 10 months of fear. Day and night blurred into one. Time stopped, but the killing did not. Men grew tired. Their bodies weakened. The land itself was dying. Every second felt endless. Hope faded quietly. But the battle continued. The wounded kept coming. Some screamed in pain. Others never spoke again. Bodies covered the ground. Lives ended without names. Over 700,000 men were dead or wounded. For a few kilometers of ground, nothing remained untouched. The earth was torn apart. Shell after shell. The smoke never cleared. And still, nothing was gained. Verdun became a symbol. Not of victory, but of endurance. Men stayed. Not because they wanted to, but because they had no choice. They kept moving. There was no way back. Silence followed the noise. Faces hardened by survival. Verdun never ended. It endured. The battle lasted 10 long months. There was no quick end. Day after day, men stayed. Leaving was not an option. Verdun never slept. The guns never rested. Bodies covered the ground. Silence followed screams. The wounded kept coming. Help was never enough. Pain stretched for miles.
So did suffering.
Fear became normal. Death became routine. For kilometers of land, the earth was destroyed. Equipment remained. Men did not.
Survivors were replaced. The cycle continued.
Graves multiplied daily. Names were lost. Many wrote final words. Most never returned. Night brought no peace, only more fire. Some escaped alive, many did not. Morning revealed the cost. Again. Survival carried guilt. Loss carried weight. Men aged in weeks. Hope faded fast.
Verdun became a symbol, not a victory.
They endured everything because they had to. Over 700,000 suffered, dead or wounded. For a few kilometers, humanity paid dearly. No glory waited here, only endurance. The land was broken, so were the men. Many wanted to leave, none could. Orders kept them there, fear kept them alive. Verdun consumed everything, time included. Rest was temporary, the war was not. Endurance defined Verdun, nothing else. They stayed without choice. They survived by chance. Verdun was not about victory. It was about endurance. Silence followed the fighting, but the cost remained. Weapons survived the battle. Many men did not. Those who lived carried scars, seen and unseen. Verdun demanded endurance and took everything else. The world watched Verdun in shock. News spread across nations. Horror followed. People feared what they saw, but learned little. Governments took notes, not warnings. Factories prepared for more, not less. Machines multiplied. So would deaths.
Lessons were misunderstood. Violence was refined.
Nations planned more wars, not peace. New battlefields were imagined, old ones ignored. Power was celebrated, human cost was not. More men were sent, fewer would return. Hope hid the truth, for now. Verdun was not the end, it was the beginning. The warning was clear, few listened. Verdun warned the world ignored it.
In the next episode, the war spreads across oceans. Submarines prepare to strike, silent, deadly.
Blockades tighten across seas, no escape.
Nations suffer from famine, hunger spreads.
The world drags deeper into darkness. The oceans carry war. Cities crumble under fire. Innocent lives lost. Armies mobilize swiftly. Preparation for more conflict. Every nation watches closely. Every move matters. Submarines patrol silently. Death lurks beneath. This is World War I. This is War Unfiltered.
Subscribe to War Unfiltered. Watch it, War Unfiltered.